The story of Göbekli Tepe begins not with its discovery, but with its concealment. For more than 10 millennia, this sacred mountain lay hidden beneath layers of earth, as if time itself conspired to keep it secret. When modern archaeologists uncovered its stones in the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey, they thought it was a fluke, just another Neolithic site. But when the dust settled and the carvings emerged from the soil, they realized this was no ordinary ruin. Massive limestone pillars arranged in perfect circles, each weighing up to 20 tons, carved with intricate symbols of lions, vultures, foxes, and snakes, creatures that seemed to guard a message etched in stone. Radiocarbon dating revealed the impossible. This temple was built around 9600 BC, nearly 7,000 years before the pyramids and 6,000 years before Stonehenge. Civilization, according to every history book, wasn't supposed to exist yet. No cities, no writing, no agriculture. And yet, here it stood, a monumental temple built by hunter-gatherers. How could people without farming, metal tools, or organized society carve and arrange such colossal stones with near-perfect precision? For decades, Göbekli Tepe has haunted historians, scientists, and mystics alike. Some say it was the first temple, the place where humanity learned to worship, to imagine gods, to think beyond survival. Others claim it was a message, a warning left behind by an older civilization, one erased by a great flood or cosmic catastrophe. And then, there are those who believe Göbekli Tepe is not a beginning, but an echo, the last memory of a lost golden age, the end of something far older than history itself. Imagine standing there 12,000 years ago. The air is cold and heavy with mist. The stars shine brighter than they do today because the world is still pure, untouched by the smoke of cities. Around you, men and women gather in silence beneath the towering stones, each carved into a T-shape, their tops broad, their bodies tall and slender. They are not idols, but symbols. Every pillar faces inward, forming a circle, a sacred space between earth and sky. The people gather firewood, light torches, and chant in a language long forgotten. They offer grain, bones, and blood to the stone gods who do not speak, gods who might once have walked among them. When German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating Göbekli Tepe in the 1990s, he realized what he was seeing could rewrite everything we knew about human origins. He said, "This is not the work of simple hunter-gatherers. This is the work of organized minds." But the deeper they dug, the stranger it became. The site had not been destroyed, it had been buried on purpose. Thousands of tons of dirt had been carried by human hands to cover the temples completely, sealing them away as if protecting them from something. Who buried it? Why? Was it to hide their sacred knowledge from an oncoming catastrophe? Was it part of a ritual, the death and rebirth of a civilization? Or was it something else entirely? Something they feared would awaken again. Every carving on the stone seems to speak of constellations, of the cycles of death and rebirth, of cosmic events in the heavens. One pillar, known as the vulture stone, appears to depict a pattern of stars, a possible map of the night sky, around 10,950 BC, the same era as the end of the last ice age. Some researchers, like Graham Hancock, believe this stone records the memory of a cataclysm, perhaps a comet impact that changed the Earth's climate and wiped out much of ancient life. If that were true, then Göbekli Tepe may not just be a temple of worship, but a memorial to survival. A sanctuary built by those who lived through the great flood myths echoed in every ancient culture, from the Sumerians, to the Hebrews, to the Maya. The same flood that destroyed Atlantis in legend may have been the same event that ended the world before ours. A civilization advanced not in technology, but in spirit and cosmic understanding. And as time passed, their descendants forgot. The world healed. New tribes rose and built their own myths, their own gods, never realizing that buried beneath their feet was the cradle of something divine. Göbekli Tepe was the world's first library, not of books, but of symbols, a library that spoke in the language of the stars. But here lies the deeper mystery. If this temple predates agriculture and cities, then it means spirituality. The search for the divine came before civilization. It means that faith did not emerge from comfort and abundance, but from survival, from longing, from a memory of something greater that humanity once touched. Göbekli Tepe stands as a paradox carved in stone, a temple built before religion, a masterpiece created before knowledge. And as we stare at its pillars today, we are forced to ask, who were these people? Were they the ancestors of every civilization to come? Or were they the last witnesses of a world that had already fallen? They buried their temple, and with it, buried their story. But stones remember, and 12,000 years later, the earth began to whisper again. In the next part, we will go deeper into the symbols, the cosmic alignments, and the secrets hidden beneath Göbekli Tepe's silent stones. Because what we've found so far may only be the surface of a truth humanity was never meant to forget. They say stone does not lie, yet the stones of Göbekli Tepe whisper in riddles. When sunlight falls across their weathered surfaces, shadows bring the carvings to life, animals seem to move, eyes glimmer, serpents slither, and birds spread their wings across time itself. These were not random decorations. Every line, every curve, was chosen with intent. The people who built this place were not carving art, they were recording knowledge, the kind of knowledge that once connected heaven and earth. But the question remains, who taught them? Some archaeologists say it was human ingenuity alone, that the spark of consciousness was beginning to bloom. But others sense something deeper, something that doesn't fit into the timeline of human evolution. Because within Göbekli Tepe lies an intelligence that seems out of place: geometry, astronomy, myth, and mathematics, woven together in stone long before they were supposed to exist. The site's layout mirrors constellations. Its pillars align with the cardinal directions. These people not only understood the sky, they built it into their sanctuary. It's as if Göbekli Tepe was designed as a mirror of the cosmos, a map of the universe carved into the bones of the earth. Many researchers have noticed that the 12 T-shaped pillars resemble human forms: broad shoulders, narrow waists, hands resting across the belly. The pillars are not just stones. They are anthropomorphic beings, guardians, or perhaps teachers. On some belts and loincloths are carved with intricate detail, as if these T figures represent ancient gods or sages who walked among humankind. Could these beings have been the source of the world's first myths, the ancestors of later deities in Sumer, Egypt, and Greece? Perhaps they were the prototypes of the gods humanity would later worship under different names. When you look closer at the carvings, you find patterns that repeat across continents and eras. The serpent, for example, coiled on the stones of Göbekli Tepe, appears thousands of years later in the temples of Egypt. The jungles of Mesoamerica, the myths of India, always the same symbol, always the same meaning: knowledge, rebirth, transformation. How could cultures separated by oceans and millennia share the same sacred imagery? Unless, perhaps, they all descended from a single source, a civilization that fell long before written history began. A civilization whose memory was carried forward in symbols instead of words. Imagine an ancient teacher standing beneath the stars, showing our ancestors how to track the solstices, how to map the heavens, how to carve meaning into stone. To them, the sky was a living book, and every star was a word written by the gods. Göbekli Tepe was their observatory, and their altar a place where they could decode the language of creation itself. The vulture stone, one of the most mysterious carvings found there, may hold the key to this lost wisdom. Some researchers believe it represents the constellations of Sagittarius and Scorpius, depicting the same celestial event recorded in myths as the Great Flood of Fire. The imagery suggests that the builders of Göbekli Tepe were not just worshipping, they were remembering. They were telling the story of a world-ending catastrophe that nearly erased humanity. If that interpretation is true, then Göbekli Tepe becomes something more than a temple. It becomes a time capsule, a warning encoded in stone, a message for the future generations who would one day uncover it. A reminder that creation and destruction are eternal twins, forever circling one another. The builders of Göbekli Tepe may have been the survivors of that destruction, those who endured the collapse of their world and vowed to preserve the truth for those who came after. They buried their temple, perhaps not in fear, but in faith that one day it would be found again. When we look into their carvings, we are looking into a mirror. The same cosmic symbols, the same alignment to the heavens, the same mythic motifs found in nearly every ancient culture: the eagle, the serpent, the twin pillars, the sun and moon appear again and again. It's as if the memory of Göbekli Tepe became the seed of every religion and civilization that followed. The builders may have called upon gods of stone, but what they were truly seeking was connection to the stars above, to the earth below, and to the mysterious intelligence that binds them together. But there is something even stranger. Beneath Göbekli Tepe, ground-penetrating radar has revealed that what we've uncovered so far is only a small fraction of the entire complex. Dozens of buried circles still lie untouched beneath the soil. Each could contain new carvings, new messages, new revelations about who we once were. What if the real story of humanity is still sleeping underground, waiting for us to remember? And if it is, why now? Why, after 12,000 years, is the Earth beginning to reveal its oldest secret? Perhaps because the cycle has returned. Because the same stars that watched over Göbekli Tepe's builders now watch over us. The same cosmic alignments they honored are forming once again. It is as if time itself breathes in rhythms, and the temple's awakening is part of that breath, a pulse from the deep past, echoing into our present. Göbekli Tepe challenges the core idea of human history. It says civilization did not begin with agriculture, began with spirit. The impulse to build temples, to gather in sacred places, to ask questions of the infinite that came first. Only later did humans settle, plant, and trade. Our ancestors did not invent gods to explain the world. They built monuments to remember them. And somewhere along the way, the memory turned into myth, and the myth turned into religion, and the truth was buried along with the stones. Today, as archaeologists dust away the last layers of soil, we stand at the edge of that rediscovery. Every new pillar uncovered is a sentence returned to us from the dawn of time, each carving a piece of a language older than speech. What if, hidden in these symbols, is not only the story of who we were, but a warning of who we might become? The ancients may have built Göbekli Tepe, not merely to honor the divine, but to remind the future us that knowledge and power divorced from wisdom lead always to ruin. We stare at their work and wonder how they did it. But maybe that's not the question we should be asking. Maybe we should be asking why. Why build something so grand only to bury it? Why encode the heavens into stone and then hide it beneath the earth? Perhaps because they knew that cycles repeat, that the world rises and falls, and that someday humanity would need to remember the truth again. The builders of Göbekli Tepe reached across time, leaving us a message carved in silence. Remember who you are. And as the wind moves through the stones today, as the sun sets and shadows creep across the carvings, it feels as if the temple is alive again. Not in ruins, not forgotten, but awakening, waiting for us to listen, waiting for us to remember. They say history is written by the victors. But what if the oldest story of all was written by the survivors? When the world we knew collapsed in fire, ice, and flood, a few carried the memory through the darkness. They did not write it on scrolls, nor carve it on tablets. They carved it into the living earth itself. That memory is Göbekli Tepe, a monument not of triumph, but remembrance. For centuries, we have looked backward, believing that humanity began in ignorance and climbed slowly toward enlightenment. But the stones tell another story, the story of a fall, a loss, a memory of greatness that came before the darkness. The builders of Göbekli Tepe may not have been inventing civilization. They may have been rebuilding it. If you listen closely, you can almost hear their intent in the wind that sweeps across the plateau. They were not asking the gods for favor. They were recording what they had seen, the stars that fell, the fires that rained, the world that drowned. They built their message from stone because stone endures. Perhaps they knew that one day, long after their language had vanished, someone would find these shapes and feel the truth in them. The same way a melody can make us remember something we've never lived. Göbekli Tepe awakened something ancient within USA's recognition, deep and wordless, of who we once were. Some believe the temple was the last outpost of Atlantis, the legendary civilization said to have vanished beneath the sea. Others see it as the work of the Watchers, the ancient beings described in the Book of Enoch, those who descended to teach mankind the secrets of heaven. Whatever name we give them, the pattern is always the same. Knowledge descends, humanity rises, pride grows, and catastrophe follows. Then the survivors begin again, guided by fragments of what was lost. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe marks the moment just after such a fall, the first heartbeat of a reborn world. The pillars stand like sentinels, but also like mirrors, reflecting the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Some show animals long extinct, others abstract shapes that defy interpretation. When the sun rises, its light cuts through the circles in precise alignments, striking certain stones as if activating a cosmic memory. These were not random choices. Whoever built this knew the rhythm of the heavens, the movement of the stars, the tilt of the earth. They were not primitive, they were astronomers, engineers, priests, and storytellers all at once. And yet, despite their mastery, they chose silence. They chose burial. Why would anyone hide such perfection? Perhaps because they knew the world was changing again. As the ice melted and floods rose, as new tribes migrated and old lands vanished, they may have realized their time was ending. They buried their temple not to abandon it, but to protect it from nature, from invasion, from oblivion. In doing so, they preserved it for us. It is almost as if they were speaking across time, saying, "When you are ready, when you have forgotten everything, dig here," and we did. Now, as scientists peel back the layers of Earth, we stand at the edge of revelation. Yet, even with all our technology, we still cannot decipher everything they left behind. Our tools can measure, date, and reconstruct, but they cannot translate the language of spirit. Göbekli Tepe is not a riddle to be solved. It is a mirror held up to our soul. When we ask who built it, we are really asking who we are. In the modern world, we've built cities of steel and glass, but few of them hold the quiet power of those ancient stones. The people of Göbekli Tepe worked without machines, without comfort, without promise of reward. What drove them? What vision compelled them to move mountains by hand? Maybe it wasn't ambition or faith, but memory. Maybe they were trying to recreate something they had once seen: a celestial order, a sacred geometry that echoed the structure of the universe itself. In every age, humanity has tried to return to that harmony. The pyramids, the ziggurats, the cathedrals, all of them are descendants of Göbekli Tepe's dream, to reunite heaven and earth. But the dream always fades. Knowledge becomes power, power becomes arrogance, and arrogance becomes ruin. The builders knew that too. That's why they buried their wisdom, hoping that when it resurfaced, humanity would be wiser, ready to understand, not to exploit. And now, 12,000 years later, their message has reached us again. The question is, have we truly changed? Or are we standing at the same crossroads they once faced, caught between remembrance and forgetting? When you look at Göbekli Tepe today, under the burning sun of Anatolia, it feels alive. The stones hum softly, as if breathing. The wind slides through the circles like a voice from another time. You can almost imagine the figures who once gathered there, eyes lifted to the sky, searching for meaning in the stars. Maybe that's what we're still doing, searching for what they knew, what they lost, what they tried to tell us. Perhaps Göbekli Tepe is not only a window into the past, but a prophecy for the future. It reminds us that history is not a straight line, it is a spiral. Every rise begins in the ashes of a fall. Every dawn is born from darkness, and somewhere deep within us, the same ancient fire still burns, the same call to build, to remember, to connect with the divine. The temple's message is not one of despair, but awakening. It tells us that civilization is not defined by technology or conquest, but by our relationship with the eternal, the stars above, and the spirit within. So as the earth gives back its oldest secret, as dust falls from the faces of forgotten gods, we are left with a choice. We can see Göbekli Tepe as just another archaeological site, or we can hear what it's been trying to say for 12,000 years, that humanity is far older, far wiser, and far more connected than we remember. The temple was never just a monument. It was a mirror reflection of what we once were and what we might become again. And so the story closes where it began, not with discovery, but with remembrance. Beneath the soil of time, our ancestors left us a whisper carved in stone. Do not forget, you are not the first, you will not be the last. The cycle continues. Remember the stars, for they remember you.